Hi everyone, Corey here from Tales from a Polk County Girl, and in this video it's going to be a post-Italy, didn't even know I was gone, did you? Um, a post-Italy trip video, going over, some lessons I learned. Traveling to Italy was, it was a first for me. Okay, so I've been dreaming about going to Italy for most of my life. I really have. I think I've romanticized it a little bit. Let me preface all this by saying this is just based on my opinion is based on my experience. I'm sure other people have had different experiences and hopefully better, but I learned some lessons in Italy that, yeah, it was hard as an American going to Italy. First of all, the stores not opening until like 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, and then closing down about 2, 3 in the afternoon for a siesta, and then not reopening again until 6, 7 o'clock. That was hard. That was hard for several reasons, mainly because of how our travel was. When we flew in, we finally got through customs and to our hotel. It was right about the time when everything was closing for siesta, the afternoon siesta. And I know siesta is not an Italian word, but it's the most appropriate one that I know of. So we had a very hard time finding somewhere to eat. We had been traveling for over 24 hours at that point, and we were hungry. And it wasn't even when we flew in. Like, our trains were usually midday, and we had to get to the train station early enough to make sure we knew what platform we had to get to and everything. And sometimes the train stations were out of food too. So by the time we got someplace, it was siesta time, still couldn't get food. It was hard. The shutting down in the middle of the day thing was an adjustment. Also, this was the first country I've ever been to where, okay, let's face it, in reality, it's the fourth country I've ever been to. United States, England, Wales, Italy. I'm not very well traveled, but it's the first country where I didn't really speak the language. I have a very rudimentary understanding of Italian. I did my best to brush up on it and learn some stuff before we went. And luckily, we had somebody in our group who had a flair for languages. She's one of the Spanish professors at the college that I work at, who this trip was through, and she picked it up real quick. Other lessons that I learned, you don't always have to go do all the touristy stuff. Some of the make sure you do what you really want to do. There are some things that we were supposed to do, but we didn't get to do because of timing issues. Like, my husband really wanted to go see the Forum. I kind of wanted to see the Forum too. We missed our appointment to see to get a tour of the full Coliseum plus the underground area. Not underground, but like the under the arena area where they had the cells where they held people who were unwilling participants in the fights and all that. So we missed out on some of that stuff, but then ended up having to do things that we weren't really particularly interested in, like going to the Uffizi Museum. The Uffizi is an art museum that has a lot of paintings from the masters. And if that's what you're into, good for you. My husband's not really into art galleries. I am, but I don't care for medieval art personally. That's just me. Um, Structured free time isn't really structured when no one knows what's going on. Finding good food in Italy was not hard. I will say this. A lot of the restaurants have their menus posted outside, and it was very easy just to stop and look at the menu. And that's how I chose some places some nights. It's, hey, this place looks good, let's eat here. That was great. Be wary of they're not locals and they're not gypsies. They're other. They're not even refugees. That's not the right word. What am I thinking of? They're other immigrants who have moved into these tourist cities, and they will, try to hustle you. Philip, Pam, and I actually got hustled while waiting on the rest of our group for dinner one night. And, I mean, at the end of the day, €5 isn't going to make or break us, but it probably made the night for that guy. And it took my husband telling me that to get me to calm down, because I wanted to punch a wall because I couldn't believe we got hustled and all that. Then come to find out that one of our trip leaders also got hustled, and at a different place. And but for him, in the big tourist areas around like the Colosseum, the Pantheon in Rome, and then in Florence, like the Uffizi, the Medici Chapel, the Accademia Gallery, all the big tourist areas, they have the Italian military, essentially, because it's not like the National Guard over here. Local police in Italy don't have as much power as the military does, and the military actually acts like a state police as well, my understanding of it. So it's in their best interest to protect the tourist areas and the tourists from these type of people, because the tourists keep getting hustled and harassed, they're not going to go, and Italy's economy depends on tourism. So at the Uffizi, where our trip leader got hustled, he started yelling at the guy and like throwing the bracelets back at him, and to the point where one of the military guys came up and shoved the hustler, like away, and started yelling at him in Italian. Of course he'd yell at him in Italian. But yeah, that was a new experience for me. They always say beware of pickpockets. Knock on wood. Yeah, I just knocked on the table and shook the camera. We won't ever have to deal with pickpockets. I am very protective of my purse when we go anywhere. And my purse has everything in it. My husband doesn't even take his wallet, and all that. But Philip actually had the little plastic thing with earbud, like the little earbud covers, in his pocket at the Colosseum, and he actually felt somebody try to take it out of his pocket. And he felt them almost get out of his pocket, and then all he did was drop his hand, and like they like scattered. They didn't get it. But that was our sole experience with pickpockets at the Colosseum. So that was interesting. Going back to the language thing. If you are going to travel to a place where you don't speak the language, I fully recommend having somebody in the group who does. If not, you hire a translator to go with you, because pleasantries and rudimentary understanding of the language will get you so far, but a lot is lost because some of the people only speak very basic English. So, what else? And the last lesson I learned, and this didn't even really have to do with being in Italy, it was traveling to Italy. Well, no. Okay, part of it was traveling to Italy. It's, if you're going to save money, if you think you're going to save money by staying outside the main city, like all of our hotels were like 30 minutes outside of Rome, Florence, and Venice. Calculate into your budget cab fare, because whatever money we thought we saved, actually ended up being spent on cabs. We kept track of it, and at the end of the trip, because it was a large group of us, it was 7, and we usually ended up having to take 2 cabs. We were spending 200 euros a day in cab fare. So like 1,500 euros this whole trip just in cab fare. Seriously. And the last thing that I learned, this was my 5th trip abroad. And on every trip, I've always taken my credit card with me. And mainly because, you know, even though I say I follow the Dave Ramsey principles and everything, I will not give up my credit card, because, and for this reason, we learned this the hard way. When we flew back in to Fort Lauderdale, which is 4 hours away from me, because it was cheaper to fly out of Fort Lauderdale. Swear to God, I'm never flying out. Unless I'm flying out of Orlando or Tampa, I'm never going anywhere again. I'm never having to drive more than an hour to an airport at this rate. Anyways, so when we flew back into Fort Lauderdale, our trip leader went to get the minivan that he had reserved. Well, the rental car company, who shall remain nameless at this point, had rented the van out earlier that day to someone else. Didn't even look at their reservations, all that crap. So, and then 2 hours later, we found out about it, because they were hemming and hawing and didn't even want to admit that they didn't have any cars. You know, they handled it so badly. So we ended up going to another rental car place. Trip leader attempted to rent the car with his debit card, but it's one of those debit cards that could also be run as a credit card. I personally have never used one of those, but I know they exist. And they were denying his card, even though this different rental car company, because I checked their website the next day, you're supposed to, if your debit card is backed by Visa or MasterCard, they're supposed to take it. Anyway, so at that point, we had been traveling for almost 24 hours and awake for almost 24 hours. I lost it, whipped out my wallet, grabbed my credit card, threw it at the guy, and said, put the car on my credit card, put it in my name. I am sleeping in my own bed tonight. I was done. So in 5 international trips, carrying that credit card with me just in case of emergencies, yeah, this was a legit emergency, or else we probably wouldn't have gotten home that night. Yeah. And it all worked out and everything, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. So that's just some stuff to keep in mind if you do travel. I mean, some of these tips can be used both domestically and internationally. So Beware pickpockets in crowded areas. If you're going to a place where you don't speak the language, make sure somebody in your group does, or hire a translator. Oh, also, if you are able to, and I understand not everybody is able to do this. My husband and I are just lucky enough that we were able to. We had roughly 1,000 euros available to us. So have 1,000 in whatever the local currency is. $1,000, 1,000 pounds sterling, 1,000 euros, 1,000, whatever the equivalent is. I know when you get into some other countries, like I don't think 1,000 yen is that much when you convert it to American. I don't know, but 1,000 euros was a substantial amount of money. But it enabled us to. We didn't spend that entire amount, just saying. But it enabled us to, just enjoy the trip, be able to eat what we wanted, not worry about the cost, buy souvenirs and Christmas gifts and stuff like that. So if you are able to, when you travel, to have about 1,000 in whatever the local currency is, do that. I recommend that. Okay, so pickpockets, language, money. Stay in the city if possible, unless there's a really good public transportation system. Because we wasted at least 2 hours a day, if not more, waiting on taxis to take us to and from the city proper, back to our hotel, or from the hotel, and then all that. Minimum of 2 hours a day. And made for some very late nights. Have that emergency credit card, just in case. I started carrying it in 2009 when I traveled, because my mom said, what if something happens and you need to buy an emergency plane ticket home? Pretty much that was what it was for. But I ended up using it and to get home. I was back in my home state, but I was able to get home. We got everybody home that night and into the morning. So yeah, Italy for the most part was great. I love seeing some of the historical stuff. If you guys are interested in what I actually saw while I was in Italy, I didn't do a travel vlog or anything, because most places you're not allowed to have your camera out. But if you guys want to hear that, please let me know. I've got some funny stories there. But yeah, so I'll talk to you guys later. And if you guys have any other travel tips, leave them down below. I'd love to hear them. Bye.